Welcome to 3D Experience World 2022. Next slide, please. My class is called Innovative, or my talk, I should say. My talk is called Innovative Mentoring for the Next Generation of Black Engineering. Next slide, please. We will go through the table of contents as listed. General introduction of the speaker, why it is important to have successful Black engineering firms, introducing Black children to engineering at a young age, plan of action to change the status quo, the part SolidWorks plays in all of this, and the conclusion. Next slide, please. Hi, my name is Eric Timmons. I'm the president and lead designer of Black Hand Side Designs. Next slide, please. A little bit about myself. I'm just a Southerner, as you can tell from my Southern twang. I'm a husband of 28 years. I have 3 children, and I'm a pawpaw to 3 grandchildren. The things that I love to do, I love Fox Body Mustangs. I love restoring them. It fires my creative juices. I love designing parts for them. Whenever I get on it and I'm trying to change the oil, and I'm like, why did they put that oil filter in that particular spot? It helps my engineering, because then I'm able to think through a project and think through a product. I love when those aha moments hit and I'm like, that's the way I should do it this way, as opposed to doing it that way. Why are we here? I'm here to create a new narrative for Blacks in the engineering industry, have a little campfire, a little discussion about the things that I've learned thus far in engineering. I've been in engineering, 23 plus years. And there's some experiences that I picked up along the way that I'm hoping I can take forward into my own company, Black Hand Side Design, and also into my mentorship program to help African Americans be a more active participant in engineering and the engineering process. Woo! Next slide, please. I don't necessarily like talking about myself. Black Hand Side Design LLC. I established this company late 2021. It's a design firm bringing lifestyle and industrial design products to the marketplace. We also work with clients' ideas to create marketable products. I have an intentionality within my business, seeking to open doors for engineers of color. Black Hand Up is my mentorship program geared to introduce elementary and middle school students to 3D design and engineering. We also advise college students on critical decisions to make them more competitive in the industry. We use SolidWorks to create room at the table for more diverse group of professionals. Next slide, please. Now, my mission has a duality. I feel like one hand washes the other. As we can employ some people, but not everyone, we're hoping in our mentorship program to bring more and more African Americans into engineering as a whole. Next slide, please. You may ask, why is it important that Black engineering firms are successful? I'm glad you asked that question, because it has not been for a lack of effort. Next slide, please. In this slide, I'd like to show you from a historical standpoint the things that have happened to us as African Americans in the engineering industry. This slide depicts the Red Summer and the dramatic drop in patents issued to Black people. We were thriving against all odds, and then came to us increased violence and impossible odds. Now, this is post-Civil War era, and it's coming into what we know as the Red Summer. The Red Summer is a season of violence against Black people from 1919 to about 1921. If we look at the first chart which shows you how that thing dropped for Black inventors during that time frame. The next chart depicts terrorism against Black people and the Black inventive, and we see how that increased in that same place. These patent drops and increase in violence happened at the exact same time. These riots and destruction of Black communities. the charts are one thing, but I also want to establish to you a timeline and examples of individuals within the engineering segment, the engineering profession, and how these racist tactics affected them in their individual careers. Next slide, please. Garrett Morgan. Garrett Morgan was a black American inventor. He was born in Paris, Kentucky in 1877. Garrett Morgan never attended school past elementary school. He had no real formal education that we know of. However, Garrett Morgan was so talented that he designed and patented a sewing machine, a chemical to straighten hair, the three-way traffic signal, and the respiratory device that would be the blueprint for the gas mask. Now, Garrett Morgan, over the process of his life, he began to recognize and see that racism was a part in why his business was not being as successful as he wanted to be. He was not ever able to go to that next level. So then, he hired white actors to pretend to own his company. That gave him some success. Then there was a gas leak in a tunnel and an explosion, and the workers were trapped in this tunnel. Garrett Morgan and his brother took his gas mask invention and went into the tunnel and saved the lives of some of the workers that were trapped inside of there. When he came out of the tunnel and they took their gas mask off, it was found out that he was black. He was not then given a hero's welcome when they found that out. And he was in fact locked out of the market for his gas mask after it was revealed that he was a black man. But I want you to also consider that by him losing this patent and losing these resources, his family was not able to continue to get those revenues to pass along that generational wealth that could have came about to him and to his family. Next slide, please. McKinley Thompson Jr. Now, McKinley Thompson Jr. he might be my personal favorite because I'm a car buff. I told you before that I love working on cars. I'm a Fox body Mustang guy. And he was the first black automotive designer. He was born in New York City in 1922. He served in the Army Corps of Engineers during World War II. He was an engineering design and layout specialist. So even while he was in the military, he was working in some type of engineering. After he got out of the Army, Motor Trend magazine ran a contest. Do you want to be an automotive designer? He submitted a design and drew a car that he deemed would be the future of automotive industry. He won the contest. His car design was featured in Motor Trend. As they were so impressed, they put his car in the magazine. And they gave him this scholarship, and he was able to attend in college at the Art Center of Art and Design in California. He went on to work for Ford Motor Company, first African American to do so. He worked to develop the 1966 Ford Bronco, but didn't get credit for it. How we know this is if you look at the pictures of his design versus what they actually produced, they're nearly identical. Now, McKinley Thompson Jr. had a Warrior project that he designed. It was his own personal venture, the Warrior. It was an automotive design that he created to be an all-terrain vehicle. It's made of space-age plastic, and he wanted to use it in areas like Africa, Central America, impoverished areas of the world where all-terrain vehicle would be necessary because they don't have paved roads. He presented the idea to Ford Motor Company. Ford Motor Company said that they couldn't produce the vehicle in large enough numbers to make a profit. And he tried to get funding for the vehicle, but he never could get funding for this vehicle. He passed away before this vehicle could ever be mass produced. And if you ever go to the Henry Ford Museum, you can see his vehicle sitting there, and as a reminder, a tangible reminder of the significant accomplishments of McKinley Thompson Jr. Next slide, please. Lonnie Johnson. Lonnie Johnson was born in Mobile, Alabama in 1949. He graduated from Tuskegee University in 1975 with a degree in nuclear engineering. He served in the U.S. Air Force, and in fact, he earned his first patent while serving on active duty. Now, you might not know Lonnie Johnson by his name, but I'm pretty sure you know him by his invention. He designed and patented the Super Soaker water gun. But what you may not know about him was that it took him 7 years to bring that product to market. His first time trying to bring it to market, he was quoted in manufacturing $200,000 for the first 1,000 guns. It was a chance encounter that he went to the American International Toy Fair, and he had a chance encounter with a toy company that decided we'll try to bring your product, we'll partner with you to bring your product to market and see what happens. He had to sue Hasbro in 2013 and was awarded $72.9 million in royalties because they cheated him out of money for his product. Now, these are 3 significant engineers in African American history, spanning over 100 plus years. The reason I use these 3 examples is because they show how over the course of time, African American engineers have been cheated out of patents and cheated out of those royalties. As a result of this happening, generational wealth was stolen. And because that generational wealth was stolen, we have the type of problems that we have today. Next slide, please. The culmination of all this information. It is vital that Black-owned engineering firms are successful because without it, Black communities lose revenue and an opportunity to close the wealth gap. The global market is robbed of ingenious products. Imagine how many products Mr. Morgan could have produced had he gotten the revenue that should have came to him for the gas mask. Black youth lose heroes and are limited by their immediate surroundings. Next slide, please. Introducing Black children to engineering at a young age. This is not as easy as it sounds, and it has a certain level of difficulties and intricacies that have come about as a result of what happened to us historically. I'll explain. Next slide, please. This isn't an easy conversation. We must create a new narrative. Because American sports were among the first to allow Black people to participate, they represent a way out of a financial situation, a way to redeem an entire family. Keep in mind, by us being denied these patents and these businesses, we were forced backwards to do things that we might not normally do. So, Black people by and large were forced to attend separate schools of higher learning and then were not allowed to work in the professions they studied. HBCUs, for instance, were long viewed as inferior universities. So then we were forced to go to these HBCUs on the one hand, but then denied occupations when you graduated from these schools. In fact, in 2021, the American Psychological Association apologized for its complicity in systemic racism and upholding the myth of white superiority. Historically, Blacks have been viewed as physically strong, but lacking mental prowess, i.e. not smart. Next slide, please. Now keep in mind, Black people still face these biases to this day. Only 2% of high school athletes receive scholarships. Fewer than 2% will play professional sports, according to a 2020 NCAA report. Now, I want you to kind of put a pinhole in that 2%, because that's vitally important. Because we already discussed earlier that they were denied opportunities as it relates to professional advancement in engineering. So now they're being squished into sports and entertainment. Next slide, please. How much time? What kind of investment is made to create a professional athlete? How much time does it take? How much energy? How much resources? Black youth typically start participating regularly in sports at the age of 8. For those that continue to high school, there's usually 3 hours of practice per day for that particular season. Now, college athletes practice an average of 20 to 30 hours per day. Remember, for a 2% opportunity to get a scholarship, for a 2% opportunity to compete professionally. Essentially, a child who starts playing a sport at age of 8 will spend 3,580 hours practicing or playing that sport. Now, I think about Steph Curry. He just recently broke the three-point shooting record that I think belonged to, it wasn't Reggie Miller. I can't remember who it belonged to. It'll come to me in a minute. Ray Allen. Belonged to Ray Allen. And he broke it. And while they were interviewing him, they asked him, how much practice do you think it would take to shoot as well as he shot? And he said, oh my God. He said, I started shooting basketball when I was like 6 years old. So however many hours I put in from then until now to create enough muscle memory to be able to repetitively shoot these shots and making them, that's how much time it would take. Now, that's all for a 2% chance to get a scholarship and a 2% chance to play in professional sports. This does not include time spent in summer camps, private lessons, and conditioning. This lack of opportunity forced blacks into a herd mentality of forcing the 100% into a 2% opportunity. Now, I had basketball dreams growing up. Unfortunately for me, I was short. How short was I? On my 16th birthday, I wore 100 pounds and I was 5 feet tall. That's how short I was. When I was in 6th grade, I went out for the basketball team. Now, I was a pretty good basketball player. I was ambidextrous. I've always been ambidextrous. I went out for basketball and I didn't make the team. I came home, I was upset, I was crying. And my mom looked at me and I'll never forget what she told me. She said, Eric, you're short. And you might not be the best person at basketball, but you're a straight A student. She dried my tears, and that was harsh to me. My mom, you're not supposed to tell me that. But what she did do, she began to encourage my academic advancement. Anytime I made the honor roll from then on, she gave me $5. That $5 became $10, and we began to play Let's Make a Deal. I think by the time I graduated high school, it was up to $20. So she began to financially reward me for my academic prowess, which caused me to study more, which caused me to get more money. I say that to say I have my mom to thank in some ways for being in academia. Now, Charles Barkley says it this way. He says, they put us in a box where we can only do sports and entertainment. White kids grow up thinking they can be a doctor, lawyer, engineers. Black kids don't think like that. I never talk to black kids about playing sports. It's unrealistic. The reason Charles Barkley says that is because of that 2% chance to go play in high school, and then that 2% chance to go on and play professional sports, and the high odds faced with the amount of time it takes and effort it takes just for that opportunity to do that. I'm not trying to offend any parent, but I will say that when you're putting your kids in sports, it's great physical activity, but you also need to take into account what the odds are realistically that they're actually going to go on and play that sport. Next slide, please. Now, it's time for us to open the eyes of the youth to more. Heroes love science, math, and change the world in engineering. You look at the slide to the left, and most of your young people are going to know who those people are. But they're not going to necessarily know who these engineers are on the right. Now, for me, I was raised in Pamlico, South Carolina, as you already know. This town borders Lake City, South Carolina. Now, Lake City, South Carolina is important because it is the birthplace of Ronald McNair, the engineer and the astronaut. He was raised in Lake City, South Carolina. He also perished in the Challenger disaster on 28 January 1986. He was one of my heroes. If it hadn't been for him, I would never have had occurred to me that I could be an engineer or designer. He was well celebrated in our areas and it was tragic when he died. But he was someone that opened my eyes to how intelligence and how engineering can be used for African Americans to pursue their dreams and goals. Next slide, please. Black hand up. To make a difference, you must be willing to be a difference. My nonprofit will partner with local organizations to introduce 3D design and additive manufacturing to elementary and middle school students. We will assist high schoolers and college students in choosing the right courses to succeed after graduation. Ensure internships and employment opportunities are available for newly degreed and certified engineers and technicians. Now, why is that important? My brother took a drafting class his freshman year of high school. Now, for me, I'm about 4 years younger than my brother. I would steal his drafting tools and try to do his assignments. This early introduction into engineering would later shape my life. Now, in the Big Bang Theory, I love the Big Bang Theory. Anybody here love Big Bang Theory? Now, y'all can't see it because y'all not my audience, but I have an audience here of y'all. My grandkids' teddy bears are sitting here, and they're cheering me on here since we're not there together in person. I have them here cheering me on virtually. They're pretending they're you, and they're giving me feedback. So Big Bang Theory is one of my favorite shows. And with Big Bang Theory, one of the episodes is called the contractual obligation implementation. In this particular episode, the university requires the guys to promote science careers to women. Now, Leonard and Howard and all the guys are sitting brainstorming on how they can get these high schoolers interested in STEMs. Now, Sheldon sounds off and he tells them the problem cannot be addressed at the high school level. By then, it is too late. You must start at the middle school or elementary school level to set them on the road to the hard sciences and maths that are necessary so they'll be interested enough by the time they get to high school to decide I want to go to college and be an engineer. And when I saw that episode, it blew my mind. And I was like, that's what we need to do in the African American community. We need to shift our focus towards engineering and math and sciences at an earlier age. Now, I went for a walk on Buckrow Beach, which is a local beach here in Hampton, and I saw 25 to 30 8-year-old kids doing football drills. Now, I normally run. I love me some workouts. And their parents were there. They were recording the events on Facebook Live. They were so proud of their kids. They were encouraging the kids, and the kids were encouraged. And it was a cool thing. But it got me to thinking, what if these kids were interested in STEMs? Say 3D printing, 3D scanning, with the same type of enthusiasm, the same type of energy that they were being encouraged to participate in football. Nothing wrong with football, but we've already established the percentages and the odds of becoming a professional football player. So that's what helped me to think up Black Hand Up. Because we have to begin to change the narrative in African Americanism back to what it was before the massacres that happened in the 1920s. Next slide, please. Plan of action to change the status quo. Sometimes you have to build your own table. My first business attempt, I invented a product called the Perfect Tree. It was a Christmas tree alternative. It was in the shape of a cross, a Christmas tree in the shape of a cross, back in 1999. For me personally, I've always had a God-given gift to come up with witty inventions. I like to call it my Bezalel gift. But however, I like the education, I like the experience, and I like the financial backing to have success. In fact, my first model was made out of 2 2x6s and garland wrap. I made those 2x6s, built them in the shape of a cross, wrapped garland around it, and that was my expression of what I saw in my mind's eye. I hadn't gone back to college yet. So I needed to transition from being an inventor to actually be a mechanical designer. I did not understand, I did not know the materials and process of industry. I did not understand two-dimensional design. I did not know three-dimensional design. I did not know what an isometric view was. How to package something, packaging. In fact, when we've got our product and we fought our way through and we got some models shipped from China. And we won a QVC contract, a small QVC contract, and QVC did a drop test. And in the drop test, they dropped it in the packaging, and my tree was designed so that the arms would connect, and it had a little pole right there where those arms would connect. Well, that pole went through the packaging and poked a hole, and it failed the drop test. So then, I had to take the product, and I had to design some little, end caps to go on the end of those two poles to stop it from sticking through the packaging. Now, mind you, I did all of this on the floor with cardboard, a utility knife, and a glue gun, because I did not understand the process, the engineering process. So in order for us to change the status quo, I had to learn from those things. My experience taught me that in order for us to be successful in business, I had to get that education and those other things. Next slide, please. In order to change the narrative, the story must continue upward. Black Hand-Side Design will provide employment opportunities to newly degreed and certified engineers and designers. Black Hand Up, however, will mentor youth interested in science and math to pursue engineering while guiding college students in courses to make them more competitive upon graduation. Basically, what I want to have happen here in 2022 is I want people to not have to go through what I went through in 1999. I don't want them to have to repeat the process. I want them to be able to pick up where I am and go forward. Next slide, please. Mentors must create a knowledge bridge. Mentor to mentee. There's a mutual benefit for mentoring our youth. We have to see the benefits in mentoring our youth. Now, I worked with Tekuan in the UK through SolidWorks Champions. And they were looking for engineers of all races and whatnot to present videos of reaching 13 to 14 years old in the United Kingdom. I worked with Greg Badeau. He was great. I'm thankful to SolidWorks Champion for opening those opportunities for us. And we presented a video. I would like to present that video to you today. Roll the tape. Hi, my name is Eric Timmons. I am a three-dimensional mechanical designer. Have you ever stopped to consider that engineering is all around us? You still there? Good. Let me tell you a little more about me. I live here in Hampton, Virginia, near the ocean. I started my own business called Black Hand-Side Designs for two reasons primarily. The first one is a lifelong dream and aspiration of mine to own my own design firm. And I also feel like I have great ideas. But then the second reason was because I wanted more people to look like me to be represented in engineering. Earlier in my career, I worked in AutoCAD, which is a 2D software, but I quickly made the switch to SolidWorks, which is a 3D type of software. I love the functionality of SolidWorks because it is a great design partner. If I'm designing a part in plastic, with the touch of a button, I can change it to aluminum, and SolidWorks will let me know what the design differences are, weight, mass, and gives me that information so that I can make an informed engineering decision. I would like to show you how I use SolidWorks software to design my own company logo. So I started by using my Sense 3D scanner to literally scan my hand for Black Hand-Side Designs. So it's a literal scan of my hand. And on my screen here is that scan that was imported into SolidWorks software. The next thing that I did is that I created a logo. I call it a coin, with my name of my business on that coin. And as you can see, that's how it looks. I created an assembly next that incorporated my hand in the center and the name all around it. One more thing,
I started off drawing because it was fun. Later, I found my brother's drafting tools. I thought they were really cool, so I started to play with them. I had no idea that I would wind up owning my own business, Black Hand Side Designs. So the next time you ask, why do I need A squared plus B squared equals C squared? It could be opening the door for you to a future in engineering. I'm Eric Timmons. Remember to keep it live on the Black Hand Side.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now, we must stop pretending that there aren't gaps in knowledge disbursement and start addressing them. I had huge gaps in my experiences. And when we go into these schools, I'm realizing that we like to call some schools good schools and bad schools. But what I personally realize is what actually is happening is you have funded schools and unfunded schools. Now, the funded schools typically have the 3D printers, they have the engineering software, and they have the things in place that these kids can go in and participate and have good success. Unfunded schools don't have any of those things. However, unfunded schools, the kids that go there are just as excited and just as curious about engineering, about 3D printing and scanning as the kids that go to the funded schools. And I'm serious about that, and that's one of my passions, is we have to kill the narrative of good school versus bad school. There are funded schools and unfunded schools, and it blows my mind to think in 2022 there could be such a thing in our great nation. Next slide, please. Creating employment opportunities is how we balance the room. Job creation is crucial for those newly graduated Black engineers. Now, if you look at my chart, you'll see that between 14 and 16% is where U.S. college-age Black population reside. This is the percentage of them that actually going to college. Now, if you go down to the purple line, which is where engineering is, you find that only about 5.5% of those in 1998 were in engineering. And that number declines and declines and declines to the last year of our records, which is 2018, which shows about 4%. Now, the next slide, the next chart shows us that we have about 5% of Black men and women in engineering and science. Now, this we know. On further analysis, engineering breakdown, 72% of engineering is white. About 11% is Hispanic. 10% is Asian. 4.5% is Black. 2.2% is unknown. So what we have happening is there are Blacks that went into education in engineering but are not employed actually in engineering, because our 4.5% is far less than those that actually initially went to school for it. So somewhere out there, we're losing people. Now, my neighbor in Huntsville, Alabama, I worked a contract in Huntsville, Alabama. And I had a neighbor who was going to school at Alabama A&M, to illustrate this point. He graduated from Alabama A&M, and I would see him in passing. Hey, how you doing, young man? We would talk about different things or whatever in engineering. I was really interested in him, but at that time, I was formulating Black Hand Up. And I was thinking about what I could do to mentor young people. And after about 90 days or so, he came to me and he asked me for help on his resume. He told me that he had not yet found a job in engineering. Not only him, but he had 2 other friends and classmates that had not found jobs either. Now, we all know in engineering, we have a shortage of engineering in the United States. So it blew my mind to think that there could be people that graduated in engineering that are having problems finding jobs. So I helped them with their resumes and buttoned up a few things, but that still doesn't excuse the fact that us as employers actually had people that were in the industry, college graduates, that were struggling to find work in engineering, which illustrates my point. There are people out there, African-American youth, that even after they get engineering degrees are falling through the cracks of employment. Next slide, please. The plan of action is dual in nature. To make up for lost time, we have to put pedal to the metal. Elementary students must be introduced to critical thinking, mathematics, and science in a way that keeps them engaged, which is why I personally own a 3D printer, personally own a scanner. I videotape my wife is in filmography. So we videotape little videos like what we saw to illustrate the kids, to get them interested in the 3D printing process, the scanning process. Middle schoolers must be shown how to apply those concepts they learned in elementary school. High schoolers must get early internships in engineering firms working in tandem with local science and math camps. Students majoring in engineering must be guided in key courses and certificates that they can earn in college to make them more competitive. I say on a personal note, they must see people like me in the industry. Whenever I'm talking to people in the industry and they say they want to have a diversity in their workplace, one of the questions I ask them is, do you go to historically black colleges and universities to recruit? Here locally in my area of Hampton, we have Old Dominion University. It's known to be a quote-unquote great engineering school. But about 15 miles from there, we have Hampton University, which is a historically black college and university that graduates engineers. We have Norfolk University. That's a historically black college and university about 10 miles in the other direction that graduates engineers. So I ask them, while you're recruiting at Old Dominion University, do you swing by those other colleges to recruit there too? Because if you want to have diversity, sometimes you have to go where they are. Now, also, I would say that I need resources to reach people. On a personal note, I told you I had a 3D printer and a 3D scanner, but when we're in SolidWorks world and we're walking through these vendors events, one of the things that we quickly find is that a good 3D printer, say one that has a heated chamber that can print, say, carbon fiber and all that cool stuff, couple of $100,000. The latest and greatest 3D scanner from Creoform, $15,000 to $20,000. So we as a culture, as a community, as engineers, as people in industry, also have to invest in black engineering firms to make sure that they have the top quality equipment so that they can also compete in the marketplace. We have to find the value in that. Next slide, please. What does SolidWorks have in all of this? I like to say this software changed my life. And I believe that it changed others. I believe there are other minorities that it changed for. My first time I went to SolidWorks World was about 6 years ago or so. It was the time that y'all had SolidWorks World in Dallas. And I was blown away by the classes. I went to the vendor section. And Creoform was there, I'll never forget, and they had a scanner. And they were scanning people and printing out little dolls of people and whatnot. I'd never seen anything like that before. And I saw the 3D printers. They was printing little boys and all kind of cool stuff. It was absolutely amazing. The classes that was going on there. I was introduced to certifications there, which put a bug in my ear about going back and going to SolidWorks and getting SolidWorks certifications. Hadn't thought about it before then. When I went to SolidWorks World, I saw it. I said, "Oh, I want to get some certifications." Went back to night classes and got some certifications. That's because of going to SolidWorks World. But one thing I also noticed at SolidWorks World was there were not a lot of black people there. So I made a mental note when it comes to mentoring that I would encourage other minorities that I see in the industry. Go to SolidWorks World. Be an active participant in your user groups. Be an active participant in SolidWorks Champion in those places because they need you just like we need them. They need to know what you're thinking, what your thoughts are. What's in it for you? If you're not black and you have a business, you're a manager, let's consider these numbers. Closing the wealth gap could net between 1.1 and $1.5 trillion to the U.S. economy by 2028, just by closing the wealth gap between blacks and whites. Now, SolidWorks has programs for kids. They have cloud-based systems. Those type of things are things that I plan on using, that I use to interest young minorities into engineering. Next slide, please. This is going to sound dramatic. I know it does, because I'm a drama queen in some ways. This software changed my life, and it feeds my creativity. If I had only had SolidWorks in 1999 on that first product design, instead of 2 2x6s, oh yeah, by the way, some green paint and garland wrap, how much different would I have done that product, that project? I would have been able to create an assembly, presentation drawings, 3D model-based definition. My presentation would have been totally cool. I would be able to pull a hallway in from the library and had a totally different experience if I'd have had SolidWorks back in 1999. Next slide, please. I use SolidWorks to try to create a coin that you see here. I scanned my hand and I decided that when we came up with the idea for a name for my business, I was being real simple and I said we'll call it Black Hand Side Design because we use my hand, the black hand side of my hand. So I took my scanner, scanned it, imported it into SolidWorks, began to play around with the coin, and passed it on to some other people on my staff, and they came up with this cool logo that you see on my shirt. I've used AutoCAD, I've used Creo, and I've used Inventor. But to me personally, SolidWorks is easier to learn and it's more intuitive than any of those other softwares. In conclusion, next slide, please. In conclusion, 4.5 million African Americans will lose their job by 2030, according to a report on labor statistics. They're going to lose those jobs because of artificial intelligence effects on manufacturing. And those jobs that are affected are where they currently work. Now, we know that COVID-19 have made this more complex because now we have to have social distancing, which is another reason to have artificial intelligence. Because where you had worker, now you're going to have worker, robot. Worker, robot. We need to retrain these people on the one hand, but we also need to recognize that the class of 2030 is in the second grade. So when it comes to these people that are losing jobs, there is a class of young people down in elementary school that haven't even yet decided what job they want, what they want to do with their lives, and future jobs that they could potentially go to is already being affected. Next slide, please. I didn't have an example to follow, but I'm hoping through all of this that I will leave a path for someone else. My experiences in engineering, my experiences in design, I want to be able to pass that on to the next generation. Now, at large corporations, minorities represent only 10% of their population in the workforce, but are about 40% of the general population in the United States. We can't maintain technology leadership in the world if we leave large segments of our population on the sidelines. Lonnie Johnson, the inventor of the Super Soaker, said that in 2017. Next slide, please. I want to thank right now SolidWorks user groups. They rock. I've lived in 5 states and 3 foreign countries. 8 states, and 3 foreign countries. And in every state that I was in, there was a SolidWorks user group that I was able to be a part of, ask questions, get answers. The interaction was amazing. I also want to thank SolidWorks champions for the opportunity to do this presentation today. They came on and they said, hey, we're looking for people to submit dissertations for SolidWorks World 2022. We're in a meeting. They said, we'll give you a free pair of socks if you do it. Yes, I did all this for a pair of socks. I'm a cheap date. I haven't got my socks yet. But anyway, I thank SolidWorks champions for this opportunity. I would like to say this in closing. There are 3 phases of life that a man goes through. There are 3 phases of life. There's the learning stage, the earning stage, and the giving stage. In the learning stage, that first 20 some odd years of life is when you're accumulating knowledge. You learn to walk. You learn to talk. You learn what to say. You learn social norms. And then what you learn in that learning stage, you carry over into your earning stage. That's when you begin to make that money. You've graduated college. You buy that dream car. You marry the woman of your dreams. You buy that house. You put away for your 401k. All of those things are done in your earning stage. But that last stage, that giving stage, that's when you get to a point in your life where you begin to think about your grandkids and your kids and what kind of future and legacy you're going to leave those. So in closing, I would like to encourage you all, what are you going to do for the next generation in your giving years? If you're not going to partner with me in Black Hand Side Design or Black Hand Up, that's fine. But partner with someone so that we can all collectively make this world a better place. Thank you for your time so much. Follow me everywhere, Black Hand Side Design. Thank you for listening so much. And remember to keep it live on the Black Hand Side. Peace.